Really great to be here in the Grand Palais in Paris. Thank you so much for joining this session. I have been so lucky that I have amazing panelists that I really look forward to introduce to all of you. My name is Peter Vangsbo. I'm the Associate Director for Climate and Sustainability in Arup in Denmark. And our session today is really about looking into how we can decarbonize the real estate industry, and also touch upon how cities as innovation arenas can be front runner to test innovation, to take public engagement, really trying to work holistic about how we decarbonize real estate and our cities. As we all know, 70% of the greenhouse gas emission is from cities. Energy, resources. Our cities have huge applications, and we have cities around the world which are front runner. All here in the panel, we have different experiences that we would like to share with you on how policy are adopted, implemented, and how does it actually work in the cities when we think out of the box and look at decarbonizing in a holistic way. Arup as a company are really trying to shape how we work to shape a better world. We cannot only do it as an engineering company, we really need you guys out there in the market. We need the experts here in the panel, and we need our citizens. And it's really core that we see it in a holistic way in order to meet the Paris Agreement in time. So let me introduce this amazing panelist that we have collected today. We have the European Network Manager, Giddings, from Built by Nature. He will start with the presentation, and then we will go to the northern town of Helsinki. With me today, I have Wesslin, the Climate Director of Helsinki Municipality. Then I will go to you, Joe Pedro. We will be talking a little bit about some cases in Spain, in Barcelona. And I really look forward to hear more about how you as a real estate innovator are pushing the limit on how we can be embedded bio-based building materials really as a front runner in Europe. And then we will close off with you, Irene, García from CNCA. You have been working and adapting embedded climate policy for many years, and as a leader of promoting the most dynamic cities in Europe, I would really like to see and to hear how we actually scale out all the good policies that we have been working on for many years. Joe, back to you. When we talked here early in the week, you highlighted a few cases, and some of the cases was in Amsterdam. Could you enlighten us a little bit about your work to promote and advocate for bio-based climate policy around Europe? How does Built by Nature work in your network with pushing the envelope on embedded carbon policy?
Sure. Thank you, Peter. Can you hear me okay? Is that all right? So, yeah, as Peter mentioned, I'm from Built by Nature, and Built by Nature is a foundation registered in the Netherlands, but working across Europe with a mission to increase the use of bio-based materials such as timber to lower the carbon emissions from construction of new buildings. Also working for benefits to nature and people as well. So we have networks in 6 countries across Europe, and cities are a part of those networks. This particular example in Amsterdam highlights a really powerful role that I think cities can play to help bring together industry. So what the Metropolitan Region of Amsterdam have done since 2020 is called the Covenant Houtbouw. So they use their role as a strategic convener. I think this is one of the most powerful things that cities can do to help take the lead and show industry the way. So what MRA did, the Metropolitan Region of Amsterdam, is they managed to convince more than 100 organizations who were delivering housing in Amsterdam to sign an agreement that by 2025, this year, 20% of new homes would be built with timber. And that's quite an ambitious target for Amsterdam, because they were starting from a place of 0.5% of new homes being built with timber. So they wanted to increase that within 5 years, from 2020 to 2025, from 0.5% to 20%. I think they didn't really have to do much in terms of changing policy. They just had to get these organizations to agree to the target and then sign this covenant. And they used their role as a convener and their buy-in to this target to help guide industry towards that target. So they got to 5% by 2025. So this year, they jumped from 0.5% to 5% of all new homes being built out of timber. Obviously, that's some way off their 20% target, but it is a tenfold increase in the number of homes they were building with timber. So this year, looking ahead to 2030, they've re-signed the agreement with a bigger cohort of organizations signing on to that target. And they've adopted the 20% target again. And I have no doubt that by 2030, they will actually reach that target and probably exceed it. So Built by Nature has played a role by funding a monitor. So obviously part of this work is monitoring how many homes actually are built in timber. It sounds like a very simple question, but I think a lot of the time we actually don't record this type of information when homes are built. What's the materials that are actually used per home? So the monitor will actually look at the percentage and track that over time leading up to 2030.
And if a lot of cities across Europe are doing the same as you see in Amsterdam, is that enough?
Well, I think there's lots of other things that cities can do, which I think we will come on to. I think that one of the other big roles cities can play is in tendering and procurement. And obviously cities own a lot of land and often release that land for house building as well. And there's some quite innovative things that cities can do when they release that land to make sure they prioritize carbon, circularity, speed of delivery, other criteria that will prioritize lower carbon construction. So I think we're going to come on to Barcelona in a minute, and they are doing that. But smaller cities are also playing a big role. So this is this Lugo? It could well be Lugo.
It's illustration for Lugo. Yeah.
Excellent. So Lugo is another city in Spain, and actually within our network, Spanish cities have been taking a very good leading role, actually, I think, and Lugo is one of them. It's a small city in Galicia, which is in the northwest of the country, and this is a very forested region in Galicia, and so Lugo saw the opportunity to try and stimulate local supply chains and work on this kind of bioregionalism. So again, Galicia adopted this target, a similar target, 20% of all new homes, I think it was, to be built with timber. And then they worked with forestry and supply side to try and make sure that timber is sourced within 100 kilometers. So this is another big role I think smaller cities can play.
And the smaller cities, they definitely play a role. So Joe, when you're doing these blueprint in smaller cities, how does that different from when you're working in Amsterdam? Is it a more dynamic process? Is it easier to engage the entire supply chain? Is it easier for you to engage with the startup and test solutions?
Yeah, it's a good question. I suppose you have to balance the size of the city, and it might be quicker and nimbler to work with smaller cities, but I think the impact you can have by working with big cities like Amsterdam is much greater in some ways, because the quantity of homes that are built in Amsterdam far exceeds the quantity of homes that are built in Lugo. So if you can convince a city like Amsterdam to take a big leading role, then they have a lot more, I suppose, they can have a lot more impact than smaller cities. Obviously, both are important.
Great. Thank you so much, Joe. Hannah, for less than 2 weeks ago, you adopted a new city strategy where whole life cycle carbon assessment of not only the municipalities' properties, but a wider group of real estate and properties have to apply a certain climate threshold. Could you give a few words on the key aspects of the new climate, climate strategy that you have rolled out?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think importantly, it's not just climate strategy, it's a city strategy that has the climate targets. We have set our climate targets for scope 1 and 2, like most cities, where district heating has played a big role. We have now tightened our targets. We need to reduce direct emissions by 85% by 2030 instead of 80%. But we also, in the city strategy, have really explicitly said that we are going to continue to be ambitious regarding building emissions, building sector emissions. And I think that's becoming more and more relevant since the emissions from energy use are down so significantly. Just earlier this year, the city of Helsinki-owned energy company closed the final coal-fired power plant in Finland. And that reduced the city emissions by 30%, and for the whole country by 2%, so that was really big. But what that also means is that the role of construction and the role of materials is, proportionately bigger. So there's no way of avoiding that, and one way we have already done for 2.5 years is that we have set this whole life carbon limit for apartment buildings. And like you said, it's not only for city-built buildings, but it's for everybody. So we have the monopoly, like you said, for planning monopoly, so we can require that. We require that in the planning phase, but also when we give out the plot. So that's what we have done. We have already tightened the limit once earlier this year, and in the city strategy, the politicians agreed that we will keep on tightening the limit going forward.
And I just also need to ask you, Hannah, Finland and especially Helsinki are well known for your circular economy actions, initiatives. Could you give a few words on how you are embedding circular economy into procurement?
Yeah, that's a good question. And the example here is from last week. A whole block of office space was just announced that it will be rebuilt. So it will not only be office, but it will be housing and leisure space, and they will use structures that are picked up from the existing building and reused in the same block. So I think we have a kind of twofold strategy. So there's the top-down, like the political will. We need to have that. But then we also want to create innovation, and that's very much bottom-up. And we see Helsinki we talk about Helsinki as a test bed. So we provide, opportunities for startups and bigger companies to try out their ideas. And we have this circular economy hub that focuses on that. And this building here is from the time when we launched the whole life carbon limit, and to make it not just regulation that constricts you as a construction company, but also actually inspires you to invent something. We came up with this competition for really low carbon building, and we got such good suggestions that 3 of them are going to be built. The top 3 are going to be built, not just the one, and they got a really coveted plot by the sea. And this is that was the start for the whole life carbon. But coming back to procurement, I completely agree with what you said. It's not enough that we have the political will, but we actually need to have the skills to procure the new materials. The materials are progressing so fast that the sourcing function is, extremely critical if we want to make the innovations be adapted faster.
And Irene, I just want to drag you into that procurement discussion, because you are working with 29 of the most progressive cities, not just in Europe, but also in the US and Asia. How do you stimulate, well-worked procurement strategies with your partner cities to enforce embedded carbon or reduction of embedded carbon?
I think in many of the instances, what we're seeing is apart from making sure that there is legislation and that the procurement guidelines are in line with the legislation, is the training. Like a few years ago, CNCA partnered with Arup to launch a city handbook for decarbonizing the built environment. And the reason was we were working with our cities to support them in developing and implementing policies to address embodied carbon. And what many of them were telling us is like the city staff in charge of the procurement, they didn't have the knowledge. And because of that lack of knowledge, they were reluctant to take decisions that implied the use of materials other than the conventional materials they were using. But that was the most stakeholder. So there was the lack of knowledge. There were also a risk aversion because not having an understanding of how is the different materials are going to perform for fire, to avoid delays in the construction, to have an understanding how is it going to perform and how it needs to be maintained. That kept from having confidence in taking decision making. And another one was the cost, because the procurement in most of the cases is geared towards cost, especially when it comes to affordable housing. And it was important to adapt the procurement not only to recognize the value in timber and other bio-based materials. I'm not talking only about the reduction in emissions and the carbon storing potential, but as well in accounting for the value that it can provide in health, to the well-being of the inhabitants. So it's important to change the procurement to accommodate for that, and to change the procurement in terms of the timeline and the delays. It's all used to conventional materials that it doesn't accommodate. So cities are both changing the procurement with different guidelines. It's just the minimum threshold you need to meet, and if you want to be ambitious and go beyond the EPBD and the national framework, this is what you need to meet, but also testing how the different processes need to be adjusted in procurement.
Thank you so much, Irene. I think the message is that cities are doing a lot of great policy, but they cannot do great policy if they don't have a supply chain which are ambitious and really want to press the boundary. And that's why I'm so happy that you are here. Joseph, as a Chief Development Officer, and you have to say the name of your company and your strategy instead of me, because I will pronounce it wrong. Tell me, give the audience a few words on why you have chosen this ambitious wood-focused strategy with your company, and tell us, how does you as a private entity try to influence the adaptation of biogenic materials?
Thank you. Well, I'm the Chief Development Officer at Distrito Natural. It's a very Spanish name, which means natural district in a way. So we are low carbon, high energy efficiency residential developer. You have very good samples here in the pavilion. You have Wudeum, now renamed as Cogedim. You have Ray Habitat. You have Wudu, who are doing similar things to us. But we are a developer who also focus on achieving affordability by reducing the energy cost of a building, because we believe that when you have to pay, you have to consider the charges that you pay when you pay a mortgage, when you pay a lease. And the way we also are approaching the use of timber was coming from two different angles. There was an angle saying environmental impact and how we have a responsibility as developers to design and develop buildings that minimize the environmental impact on the planet. But also there is a social impact behind it. The use of timber, and you put the example of Lugo and how they are using wood and timber that is sourced in the area. It has an impact on generating better jobs, reactivating economy in areas that has been completely abandoned for the last year. We have very extreme fires in Galicia this summer, and the main reason for that was there hasn't been forestry management for many years. And this land that has been completely abandoned, there is a way of reuse them, repurpose them, manage them properly, and generate a new economy that is sustainable. What is better than that? Using capitalists to reactivate something that has been completely abandoned. That's how we should see the world, right? And this is why we were born, saying we want to design houses that minimize the environmental impact, that are resilient to climate change in the long term, in a country where we have an extreme weather. Madrid is a city where we even had a snowing storm a few years ago. We have 45 degrees in summer. So we have extreme weathers, and we have to make sure that our buildings are refugees when the climate change comes accelerate in a few years.
And do you feel as a innovative company that you stand alone in the supply chain, or have you joined forces with competitors, partners, cities in Spain?
Innovation is a very tricky word, because we're not more innovative than other companies that have been doing this in other countries. But it's true that we are pioneers in the Spanish market. We're trying to be the first ones in the Spanish market. That has a very good and positive and negative thing. Sometimes we're being considered as extreme ecologists and hippies, and sometimes we're being considered the typical developer that's trying to do greenwashing. So in a market where we still have to educate it takes more effort, I would say. But it's true that the full supply chain, including the timber manufacturers, cities, are really promoting this. They are understanding it. The good thing is that we have very good samples in Europe, so we just have to say, we're doing this, but by the way, they've been doing this in France for a few years already, so we're not making something new here. So it has good and negative things.
So Hannah, I will come back to you, because you're also working both with researchers, with startups, and you told me you have as a climate director, you have an obligation to educate your partners, a little bit like what Joseph mentioned. How do Helsinki City educate the citizens and the supply chain?
Well, one really interesting thing that we've had running for a couple of years is it's not really actually educating. I would say that it's really like valuable advice. So we have a whole team that is giving energy efficiency advice to housing companies. So that's how the whole housing sector is organized in Finland. So people live in houses that are owned by housing companies, and they have regular maintenance. And when they get to the maintenance phase, kind of a big phase, we contact them proactively and say that, are you aware of these opportunities to reduce your energy consumption? So it can be energy efficiency improvements, it could be the method of heating that you change at the moment, it could be how you, during the renovation, also build infrastructure for charging electric vehicles, it could be measures that you take to prepare your building for the changing climate, the heat and the flooding risk and all of that. So we provide that advice free of charge. We connect them with a list of approved good providers, and we help them look at the contracts and proposals if they make sense and all of that, and help them come up with a business case for doing that.
And you feel like, as Joseph are saying, that the supply chain also are pushing you to take more ambitious climate decisions?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the problem now that we see with the whole life carbon limit is that it's really a minimum limit. For us, it's not dependent on technology. We don't require wood. We just require or any other material technology. We just require a certain threshold to be met. But at the moment, the industry is actually telling us that your threshold is too low. I mean, too high. We could do much better. You require 14. We could do even 5 if you talk to wood construction, or we could do 10 if you talk to some other concrete construction. And now we're thinking we don't reward them for going below the limit. How can we reward them? I mean, and there's also national legislation that also sets a minimum limit, but doesn't incentivize innovation. So that's where we are.
And Joseph, I will come back to you because in Denmark, where I come from, we have a program called Reduction Roadmap, where the entire supply chain have really pushed new policy to be developed. And the political system in Denmark have actually said, this is too much. If the entire supply chain decide the climate target, we are afraid as politicians that we will create very, very nice cities, but only for the rich. So Joseph, I know it's unfair to put you on the limelight here. Do you agree? Do you think that that the business model that you are working on is actually marginalizing our cities and are excluding citizens for living in some of the greater cities? So my question is the embedded carbon actually a challenge for homogeneous city in the future?
I feel the pressure now to answer this, but what is true that we need to rethink the way we are approaching development from the start, and that means the capital structures we're using to develop housing. We've been using short-term money to develop something that is going to stay there for the very long term. That's the first mistake we're having. So we need to rethink of new capital structures that goes along on thinking on the long term for residential, and cities and politicians that goes with it, meaning having long-term regulation and so promoting long-term money to invest in housing, infrastructure money, smart money to invest in housing. They will for sure, because they are doing already, invest in timber, biosource materials, because they really think for the long term. They're going to push more for being more innovative, think on better solutions, think on solutions where you can mitigate risk. When you think about the use of timber, the structural cost over the all construction cost is 30%. If you can use industrialized timber, you're mitigating the risk of not having labor, of increasing price of concrete, price of steel. So it's a way, it's a tool that you can have for ensuring long-term money.
Thank you, and it's a very difficult question, Irene. I will end this debate with a dream. I see you as the EU Commissioner for sustainable building in Europe. What policy could you see that we could scale out across Europe, which will really make a huge difference on how we reduce our embedded carbon?
I think the policy is, in addition to the mandatory whole life cycle assessment, to make sure that we have an understanding of how ambitious we can be. I really love the Helsinki model in scoring, like just the operational, the embodied, but also they were calling the green factor. I would also add this social factor to make sure that the developers were not only looking into the carbon tunnel of a number, but also thinking of how that can contribute to the positive well-being of society and also being rewarded for that, so that is affordable. When you're looking into projects of affordability, like it's also the word they combine the architecture's sustainability and affordability. Every time they tell you we needed to think a bit outside of the box to deliver, but then it was possible. So that means that if that was the first initial project, as soon as they start escalating that, it become easier and more affordable, and that is feasible. The only thing is you need to put the regulation. So I would put that as a regulation.
And Joe, also you, I see you follow Irene after she has been the EU Commissioner. So like in 20 years from now, what perspective on policy could you see that we will adapt in 20 years from now to stimulate the whole biogenic transition in urban transformation, how it can lead to better well-being of our society?
Well, luckily I followed Irene in the job, so the foundation is laid. But I think rather than a policy, I'd probably introduce a new vision for how we see our cities, and to focus on carbon storage. I think we haven't really talked about the role of cities as being vast carbon stores. I think this is the vision that I would lead with across Europe. So if you imagine all of the bio-based materials that are in our cities, all of them have carbon within them. And the more carbon we can store in our cities for the long term and make sure that it stays there within construction, we can actually turn our cities into vast carbon stores rather than carbon emitters. So that's the vision that I would lead with.
This will be the final word for this panelist. Please help me give a big applause to Joe, Hannah, Irene, and Joseph. Thank you so much for your attention.